He's the equivalent of Paul Ryan. Doesn't he look a lot like Paul Ryan standing over there? Yeah. We have Mark Benson from Blue Line Radio standing over there. He's the one that has the I Club Hippies shirt on. And then we have Reverend Warren Sprouse from Bible Forum in the back over there on the podium, so we're glad to see him out here as well. But let's get things started, and I want to introduce someone I think a great deal of, someone who is very forthright in the way she believes about things, done an outstanding job at the General Assembly in North Carolina. That's Representative Carolyn Justice. Welcome, Ms. Justice.
Woo! Woo! Have I got to yell like that? Can you hear me?
No!
Very good. I don't know about this going first, because, you know, I usually bat cleanup. So I'm going to start out and put the mark pretty high so everybody else comes up to it. I was going to share with you a short thing. I'm a member of the Lions Club in our nation, and of course we support efforts to help the blind and those with visually impaired. But something you might not know about the Lions is we have an annual Liberty Day where we celebrate the birthday of James Madison, because James Madison is the father of the Constitution, and it's our mission to put the Constitution in the hands of every fifth grader in the nation. And I mention that just to say this. This is going to take a lot of organization, people like the Heritage Foundation, Americans for Prosperity. This is going to take a lot of organizations and a lot of people to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And I'm just honored to be a part of providing this Constitution. James Madison, if you're under 40 years old, raise your hand. James Madison was 36 years old when he arrived in Philadelphia in May of 1787 to begin work on the Constitution. We have young folks out there that need to be engaged, and they have the ability and the talent and the brain to do that, and we need to work on getting them involved. Madison said, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment by those in power than by violence and sudden usurpation. I think that's right, don't you? Isn't that how it happened to us? It eased up on us. And one day, there it was, and we were dealing with it. As a legislator, there's something you might not know, but my fellow legislators know. When the liberals or the left is in control, they control the agenda, the bills, the dialogue, the conversation. Senator Goolsbee has not had the honor of experience in that, since when he went into office, the Republicans were in control in North Carolina. But Senator Rouzer and I certainly have experienced that. So here's what conservatives have to do when liberals are in charge. We spend all our time just trying to make bad bills not so bad. And so all our effort is spent in just trying to hold back this train moving forward at lightning speed. And it's almost impossible to do that. And once though in North Carolina, after 100 years of total control by the liberals, almost total control, 2 years ago, conservatives took the General Assembly of North Carolina, the House and the Senate. For the first time then, we control the dialogue. We control the bills. We control the discussion. And until you get in that position, you can't accomplish anything. This issue this time is not about any one candidate. It's about taking conservative control. It's about being able to control the conversation. It's about being able to turn this country back to the right. Because it certainly took a left turn some time ago. And it needs to get back on track. I'm going to share something with you in conclusion that was said by a very liberal man. But it's brilliant, and it's brilliant for us. Gordon G., who was at the time the president of Ohio State University, that liberal enough for you, was speaking to a graduating class at NC State. And he said, we are in a revolution again. And this is some years ago he said it, but it fits so perfectly today. He said that the Revolutionary War was fought to determine if we become a nation. The Civil War was fought to determine if we would stay a nation. And this war today will determine what kind of nation we will be. This is big stuff. This is not to be taken lightly. This is not to assume your neighbor will do it. This is for you to go home today, get out your address book, get on your Facebook, and if you do that tweeting, whatever it is, do that. Communicate with everybody you know every chance you get. You are responsible for the outcome of this. Thank you.
Carolyn, there's no doubt. When you look back here at this bus, you'll see two fine organizations, the Heritage Foundation and the Family Research Council. We just had an unfortunate event that turned out not as bad, thank goodness, due to the actions of some security folks. You're going to hear from some amazing folks today. It is important. This is an election of a lifetime. Who would have thought that we'd be looking at our companies now, companies that used to provide health care because it was a benefit, now being forced to do so by their government, having to choose between paying a fine or providing health care. Next up, I'd like to call on Colonel Francis DeLuca. He is the Civitas Institute, president of that fine organization. Colonel Francis DeLuca.
So there is something worse than going first, and that's going second right after Carolyn Justice. But glad to hear Carolyn talk about what's going on here. I want to say just a couple of words about leadership and why that's important. Let's talk about the state and then the nation. Leadership at the state level, what's that meant? Today that's meant that we don't have voter ID because of leaders of the state decide to veto it. It's also meant a delay in addressing the state employee health care crisis, which cost all of you money and more in higher taxes because of the state it was in and vetoes that we issued. What else did it do? It delayed budgets. It delayed the budgets being passed because the leader of the state decided that wasn't to our liking. What's the other thing that really happened is there's been a lack of leadership in North Carolina about the direction we're going to head. There's been an absolute lack at the top of the state in terms of which way do we head. Now, those are all kind of fiscal things, some not, but also the leaders you pick are important for the tone they set. You know, look at nationally. There's no more better representation of what happens at the national level when you have a leader who doesn't set the right tone. If you go back to the 90s and look what Bill Clinton did to the conversation in this nation. He coarsened the conversation with his behaviors in the Oval Office. That was a leader that was popularly elected, and look what happened. That has changed our nation for the worse. Then you look at who we have now. And I want to give you a very specific representation of how the leadership at the top can change public opinion. And one of the things Civitas does is we do public opinion polling in North Carolina. And I want to give you a couple numbers, and then I'm going to finish up. In February of this year, when we were polling the marriage amendment was passed, among black voters, the marriage amendment was 65 for, 24 against. White voters were 63 in favor, 31 against. Black voters were more in support of the marriage amendment than white voters. Always saw that, and that was always the case. Well, the day after the election, it passed 62% North Carolina what it should have. And Barack Obama came out and said he was for gay marriage, same-sex marriage, and he wanted to see that, and that will be part of the Democratic platform. In July, we polled. Black voters are now only 54 to 43 against. And here's one thing that's changed their perception of same-sex marriage dramatically. White voters are still 66 to 31. So as you think about the future and the leaders you pick, think about how they will permanently change the society. Not just economically, which we all understand what's going on economically, but about socially and about the way our culture develops down the road and how our children and grandchildren will live. Thank you.
Someone called the show this morning and said from 17th Street to this river is one of the most liberal places in North Carolina. Someone who loves to get under the skin of liberals every day, unapologetically conservative every single day. Has a good time being that way. Senator Tom Goolsbee.
Got that right, my friend. You know, when you come to Wilmington, we like to deliver this kind of weather. We appreciate Heritage Foundation and Family Policy Council being with us today. You know, one thing we didn't know is that Carolyn Justice is leaving the House after many, many years, and we will not have her leadership up there, and we're going to very, very much miss her. I will tell you, one of the last things that I got to do, and one of the most important things Carolyn did, is I helped shepherd her bill through the Senate after she passed it through the House. And it's a bill that was very important to her. It was her own brainchild. And what it was, is it says that of the billions of dollars that flow through the state, that flow through us from both our own state money and federal money, that now all the nonprofits that receive that money have to open up their books, not only their tax records, but their accounting records, so that we can see how their money is spent. Now, you can make Carolyn justice for that. That's the kind of to operate literally. I published on my Facebook, it was about 60 pages. It was well over $2 billion worth of federal flow-through money that goes out to nonprofits across the state of North Carolina that heretofore never had to open their books up to let you see how they spend their money, wisely or unwisely, how they spend the money that you give them. And that's where leadership really comes in. When I arrived 2 years ago in the Senate for the first time, the Republicans took over. $3 billion in debt our state was. We had a $1.3 billion extra tax that had been added onto you, and a sales tax that you were having to pay at a time when our economy was totally in the tank. And the answer the other side gave on how to fix it was to simply take another $3 billion out of your pocket in order to balance the budget in North Carolina. Well, you know what the new leadership said? David Rouzer up there, and Carolyn Justice, and Danny McComas, me, we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to live within our means. How many of you all took incredible hits to your income over the last several years? A lot of folks here lost their jobs. A lot of folks lost a lot of money, had to extend retirement out, had to help their children, had to do all sorts of things. Government, the 5 years prior to that recession, had grown 64% over 5 years, along to 83% in the 10 years prior. And there was no call at all on the other side for cutting anything. It was taking another $3 billion out of your pocket and giving it to the government to disappear. Well, we said no. We balanced the budget like any fiscally responsible, right-thinking human being would do in leadership, and we cut $1.3 billion in the sales tax. I saw these morons running around in Raleigh with pennies taped on their collars, saying it's just a penny. It's just a penny. No, it's $1.3 billion that we put back in the economy so you could have it. Because you know what? It's your money. It's your money in the end. You're the ones who fund government. You know that. Thank you for being out here today. Most everybody here is working, had other things to do. Thank you for caring enough to come out and support these kinds of values, to support Heritage and Family Policy Council. It's my pleasure to serve the good people in New Hanover County as long as you'll have me. God bless you. God bless the U.S. and God bless the great state of North Carolina.
By the way, the back of this book right here says not funded with taxpayer dollars. And Civitas Institute, not funded with taxpayer dollars. But our next guest, our next speaker, Senator David Rouzer, colleague of Senator Goolsby's, if you're watching TV lately, you would think he wouldn't even get invited to his own family reunion. Those are simply not true. And you're going to hear from him right now. Senator David Rouzer running for 7th Congressional District here in North Carolina.
Thank you very much, Chad. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And, you know, my grandmother has seen some of those ads. She called me. She said, David, how can they do that? I said, well, grandmother, it's just politics. And that's the truth. There are going to be a lot of ads out there. But that's not why I'm here today. Why I'm here because of this bus right here. Not the bus literally, but what's printed on this bus. I was sitting here looking over this just a few minutes ago. Saving the American dream. Fix the debt, cut spending, restore prosperity, protect life, honor marriage, respect religious liberty. That says it all. If we get back to the founding principles, the moral and spiritual principles that this country was founded on, that is how we're going to turn this country around. We've gotten so far away from that as a country. You know, my time with Senator Helms, one of the stories, and this was the first place I ever heard this story, and it's should be taught in schools all across America was the story of Ben Franklin right after the Constitutional Convention. He walked out, the lady tugged him on the sleeve, on the coat jacket, and she said, "Dr. Franklin, what have we got? A monarchy or a republic?" And he said, "My dear lady, we have a republic if we can keep it." That needs to be taught in every single classroom all across this country. People wake up every morning and they think what we have here in this country is going to be here forever. We take it for granted. You know, my experience, the reason why I got involved in politics, I was over in Prague, the Czech Republic. I was in a program, 60 students, 10 of us from America, 50 from the former communist bloc. My roommate was from Romania. This was summer of '94. They lived their entire lives under tyranny. He looked at me and he teared up and he said, "David," he said, "you folks in America," he said, "y'all don't have a clue." He said, "You take what you have for granted." He said, "We were taught deaf to America in the schools." He said, "But yet in our hearts, we long to get to America." When Ronald Reagan stood in front of that wall, Berlin Wall, and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," he said, "our hearts leapt for joy." Now that's real leadership. Real leadership, folks who have the moral courage to go out and to proclaim what may not necessarily be popular, but what's right. You know, in that speech that Reagan gave when he said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," you know how many times the State Department took that line out of the speech? Numerous. Even the final edition of that speech didn't have that line. But thank goodness for Ronald Reagan, he wrote it back in. That's moral courage. That's what we got to have today to turn this country around. And so that's why I appreciate each of you being out here this afternoon. Your participation this afternoon signifies your interest and your commitment to turning this country around, getting back to the moral and spiritual principles that made this country great. So I applaud you. And like Carolyn Justice said, go home and get on Twitter and Facebook and everything else and get folks stirred up to get out and vote in November. This election, and I know it's said every election, but I think you and I both feel it. This election is the most critical one this country has ever faced. It's just like Carolyn said, this is going to determine what kind of country we have. We're going to either take the path of more spending, more debt, and economic disaster, or we're going to take a very different path of a much more limited government, less spending, and economic prosperity. And along the way, let's keep in mind those values: protect life, honor marriage, respect religious liberty, because if we don't have those, we don't have anything. May God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
From a couple of elected officials, you've heard from the head of a think tank here in North Carolina, but as most of you know, the work's done in the trenches. Someone who has done her share of that and more, who's made a profound difference down in Brunswick County, someone who helped get, I believe, Miss Pat Sykes is here, worked with her campaign to get her elected. Next up, Jenny Qualley, an amazing grassroots activist. Give her a round of applause. Jenny Qualley.
Running mate, and Obama invited her out on the campaign trail saying, you know, they're good men, but they just don't share our values. Really? A truism. What values would they not share? Let's name some. Leadership, honesty, courage, grace, loyalty, respect, integrity, and trust, to name a few. Then there's the one I want to address today. In my opinion, the value that is most lacked by the left is inspiration. To me, they are the antithesis of inspiration. They are the very definition of the proper antonym of inspiration, which is disincentive. Inspiration means encouragement. Disincentive means discouragement. Isn't it awful that this administration, who could be the epitome of inspiration, has used their power to discourage, divide, and even punish the successful in our society? And then the ultimate disincentive came when Mr. Obama went out to business owners and said, if you're successful in business, you didn't build that, somebody else did that. That statement goes to the heart and soul of the elite leftist taste for our American value system of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yes, to me, inspiration is a mark of a free people and a free society. The ability to pursue and succeed in one's own dreams. It inspires others to do the same. Now, I've been reading the biography of Steve Jobs. Jobs was a ruthless boss, very eccentric, but one common theme reported about him was that he inspired people to do things they never thought they could do. He simply would not accept it if people said things couldn't be done. He had engineers doing the most mundane tasks in the office to look at their work as art. He's quoted as saying, "I've learned over the years that when you have really good people, you don't need to beg them. By expecting them to do great things, you can get them to do great things." Wouldn't you love to hear that kind of inspiration and expectation of greatness from our current administration? In the book, The Amateur by Edward Klein, Klein quotes a historian who met with Mr. Obama early in his presidency. And he said, since the beginning of this administration, Obama hasn't been able to capture the public's imagination and inspire people to follow it. Vision isn't enough in a president. Great presidents not only have to enunciate their vision, but they have to lead by example and inspiration. And what a plethora of inspiring stories the left could trumpet, even from everyday people like me. Everyone has a story, and being inspired by ordinary people happens to me all the time. And they aren't hard to find, just look around you. A few examples here today. I'm inspired by people who take care of the sick and the elderly, like my friend Ruth, or by my friend Brenda, who designs beautiful interiors so we can go home and have a haven. I'm inspired by my husband, who balances me when I get off track and cooks me beautiful meals when I come home from my quests. Everyone has a gift to inspire and a way to contribute to this great nation. Now, my story isn't unusual or exceptional, but it's an American story. I'm the daughter of a homemaker and a World War II veteran, probably similar to your story. And my dad and his family built a very successful business over years of hard work, and yes, he did build that. I went to Catholic school and I lived with the 10 Commandments and the barometer, and my mother's iron fist as the barometer for my life. And then when I was 15, I got my first real job, and I could not wait to bring home that paycheck so that I could buy things that I wanted without relying on my parents. How empowering is it, a paycheck earned from one's own hard work? You know that feeling. So I went on to college, got married, had a family, and the rest is history. But I built it, and I had the freedom to build that, and I'm so happy that I had the choice to do that. And then there are those that are far from ordinary and every day are inspiring us, our brave military and their families, and our humble veterans. There is one here today. There's many veterans here today, and I salute you all, but I'm going to point out Mr. Warren Casey. He's 91 years old. He served in the Philippines in the Army Air Corps. Obama might call it the Air Corps. But Mr. Casey and all veterans here today, thank you for your service. If left unfettered, we can do great things so as to inspire others to do the same and to be rewarded for our efforts. And that's the American dream that I believe in. And that's the one I'm here today fighting along with Heritage and you and the Family Research Council. We've got to preserve American values such as inspiration from being relegated to the trash bin of history. And in closing, what I want to say to you is the left wants us to believe that government is the great equalizer. The answers, while social and economic ills, a loving nanny, so wonderful, so as to trump each individual's private pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. That's not the American value system our founders or our fathers intended. And we stand here today boldly telling the liberals we will vote our values in November, and we will inspire others to do the same. Thank you.
This morning said that Obama created his administration, his efforts as president, gave himself an incomplete. You're probably going to have a lot to say about that in November, where you can judge whether it's complete or not. Our next speaker, or some next few speakers, will come from this wonderful tour right here. This one actually started a little bit of her career here in North Carolina with the Civitas Institute, and now she is with Heritage Action for America Deputy Political Director Jessica Anderson. Give her a round.
And I always love coming back to North Carolina where I started and where I actually, my husband and I got married here, we met here, he was stationed at Fort Bragg, so North Carolina is our home away from home, wherever the Army takes us. But we're here today to stand against what's going on in other parts of our state. Anybody know? So, today starts Democrat National Convention down in Charlotte. Not many hours from here, but many ideologies and policies away from us. So we're here, we brought this bus. Wilmington is our first stop of the week. We're here to say the DNC does not speak for me, Planned Parenthood does not speak for me, and Representative Mike McIntyre does not speak for me. That is what this election in November is about. That is what we as conservatives are standing on and what we will do when we vote our values in November. But we all know that accountability starts long before we get to the ballot box. It starts with asking important questions at town hall meetings. It starts with letters to the editor, with calling your local talk radio, with telling your friends, your family, informing your neighbors that conservatives have a voice and that these values are based on American prosperity, a strong national defense, and the freedom and the right to cut spending and limit our government. So as we stand to these values, as we vote these values in November, we're here, you guys are all here, you came out on a very hot day, but thankfully no rain, so we're thankful for that. But you know who's not here today? Who's not in the district? Representative McIntyre. Do you know where he is today? He's at the DNC. He's at the DNC because he supports a party that believes in liberal ideology. He votes like it. He sends money to candidates who support it. And it is our job, and you guys, your job, all of our job, to hold these guys accountable. Southeast North Carolina, we have an important decision to make come November, and I trust each of you will use the tools provided by Heritage Action to hold your member of Congress accountable, to hold McIntyre accountable to his voting record. We've got a number of materials here for you to take, to distribute with your friends and family to share. And when you go home, visit heritageaction.com. Take a look at the scorecard. Look at the votes of these members of Congress that say that they represent Southeast North Carolina. Well, I don't live here, so he definitely doesn't represent me. But knowing many of you, I know he doesn't represent you either. Use this chance in November to make a stand, and don't let accountability stop when you leave the ballot box. Let it continue into this new year as we seek to provide America that is based on freedom, based on opportunity, and based on prosperity. Thank you all for being here. We just couldn't be here without you. I've traveled, I think, over a dozen states. Me personally, the bus has been to over 25 states. This is our second stop in North Carolina, so we've come back because we know that the road to the White House runs through North Carolina. And we're counting on each of you to stand strong with your values and stand with us. Again, thank you for being here. Thanks to Chad, and we'll turn it back over to you.
My right shoulder, your left, you see a crane across the river? It's working on the riverfront wall, which is collapsing into the Cape Fear River. That's your government-funded river wall that's collapsing into the river, kind of like the DNC's collapsing on Charlotte right now. Our next guest is going to be Tom McCluskey. He is with the Family Research Council Action. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for being on the show this morning.
I'm from Washington, and I'm here to help you. Jokes haven't started yet, folks. Now, actually, I'm from Washington. I'm here to learn from you. Because since 2010, when you guys, when I say you guys were the unsung heroes in 2010, with the North Carolina legislature switching after 100 years. I mean, just think about it. I mean, Nancy Pelosi had just gotten first elected when you guys switched your legislature. First had a Democratic legislature. Sorry, last had a Republican legislature. Now, as Jessica pointed out, we're not the only people here today visiting and understanding how important North Carolina is. We have a friend who's a little bit up the road today in Charlotte, and he's getting a lot of heat for something he said, and it's something I actually agree with. It's the phrase, "You didn't build that." And this is some audience participation. Don't be scared, even Joe Biden can do it. And one thing I've learned, bless his heart, Joe Biden can do it, is 23 million people unemployed. Did you guys build that?
No.
Regulations that will shut down banks and let the government run it. Did you guys build that?
No.
A healthcare law that is so oppressive, it is willing to shut down churches and tell them what they should believe and what they should pay for. Did you guys build that?
No.
No, of course not. But this next election, you guys can build. There is a difference of 14,000 votes in the last election between Barack Obama and his opponent. There are over 200,000 unregistered Christians in the state of North Carolina. We need to change that. That's one thing. That's why we're doing this tour right now. We're not only registering people to vote. You can get information right at our booth. We're also giving you the tools so you can register your neighbors to vote, people next to you in the pews to vote. So that come in November, when somebody says, "Oh, look at that. Did you build that?" What are y'all going to say? Yes. Thank you. Coming up next, there's no doubt the impact that think tanks have across this great nation. And the greatest of those think tanks, the one that's been around the longest, the one that has worked the hardest, the one that even helped advise the Reagan cabinet through some of the most prosperous years of this nation's history, is the Heritage Foundation. They're some of the people that helped put this tour together. We're very fortunate to have with us today Genevieve Wood, Vice President for the Heritage Foundation. Welcome, make her feel welcome, Genevieve.
I know every speaker has said it, but I cannot tell you what an encouragement it has been to us. We've been around the country, as Jessica noted, we've been in over 20 states, North Carolina twice, to meet people like you in every state and in so many communities around the country. And as Tom said, we are from Washington, but we know that Washington is not going to be fixed by people in Washington. It's going to be people coming from every state across this country, voting, sending good people like the folks you all heard this morning, and I am encouraged, and I think you should be encouraged. We saw what happened in 2010 with the Tea Party. There were bells ringing inside of Heritage, I can assure you, because we knew folks were out there, but we've never seen them show up like this. I know many of you were involved, so thank you, thank you, thank you for what you've done and what you're continuing to do. At Heritage, we are a think tank, and we create ideas and public policies based on the following principles: limited government, individual freedom, free enterprise, traditional American values, and a strong national defense. If it doesn't meet that criteria, we don't support it. And folks, I don't have to tell you, all of those principles are under attack today in America. They're under attack in Washington, they're under attack in Raleigh, they're under attack in state capitals around this country. And they're under attack from a growing government. We have spending problems, yes, but the biggest spending problems we have are because the government is doing things it was never created or intended to do. And so we can cut all the spending tomorrow, we can balance the budget tomorrow, but if we don't start limiting the role of government, we'll be right back where we are today. I know many of you probably watched some of what happened in Tampa last week, and as warm as it is here, believe me, it is warmer in Tampa. We can attest to that. But I will tell you, they had a debt clock. Some of you probably saw it. We're approaching $16 trillion in debt. Now, for a lot of folks, they look at that and they think it's a big number. What does that really mean? I'm just going to break it down very briefly for you. For every man, woman, and child in this country of working age, so if you're 65 and younger, you owe $200,000 in debt today. That is just based on the promises our government has made to people today that they cannot keep. $200,000. Now, not only do we believe that is absolutely unsustainable as a country, and everybody knows it, it's immoral to pass that on to the next generation of Americans. And that's why we've called our part of the tour Saving the American Dream. Folks said, well, why did Heritage and Family Research Council team up together on this? Because the issues that before our country, the principles that really make our country so strong, see among us, they're, we believe, indivisible. You cannot have strong families if you are crushing them in taxes and debt. And you're not going to have a strong country if you don't have strong families. So it all goes together. You can't just come at it from one angle. It all goes together. And that's why it comes back to electing folks who have that vision that it all goes together. It's not a single issue kind of election. Now, many of you have talked about or have mentioned earlier that we've goal here is to get you to carry the message on. As I always say, if it's just us talking to you, we'll never do it. But if you all talk to 5 other people or 10 other people, that's the way we make the change. Is the materials that we have on the table today, both FRC and Heritage, we encourage you to please take them. This is a packet of materials from Heritage. It's called Saving the American Dream. And this is a budget plan that we put together about a year and a half ago. And I will tell you, it makes Paul Ryan look like a moderate. He points to us and goes, you think I'm conservative? Look at those guys. But it would balance the budget in 10 years, and it would cut the size of government in half in the next 25. And that is absolutely where we have to go. Now, what's in your materials that, yeah, you can learn more about the plan and learn more about what it's going to take to get government under control. But we have materials in here that you can pass on to others. Brochures that you can pass on to families, friends, folks in church, and hopefully get it to take it to the next level. It's also got a pocket constitution in there as well. Now, I would say to my friends on the conservative side of the aisle, I say, you know what, if we just cut the Department of Education, if we just get rid of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, this is how we get spending. And my friends on the left said, we just got to get out of these wars. We just got to start taxing the 1% a little bit more. Ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, we can do all of those things, and that isn't going to fix the problem. The biggest spending in this country is something that you've heard folks talk about. Chris Christie talked about it the other night. Paul Ryan has talked about it. It's entitlements. They are 43% of the federal budget today. 43% of taxpayer dollars go to pay for this program. We've got to elect people of courage who care more about the next generation